Morning, everyone. So yes, the news is quite bad now. It's quite funny, and I knew I shouldn't have done. You complain, you go after the general election and all the summer nonsense, and you think, oh, politics going to settle down, be quite boring now. It's going to be quite hard to scratch around for things to talk about, and then Donald Trump wins a landslide. Anyway, never mind. So yes, it's actually quite a poor leaving present. So this will be my last sort of morning politics social, the morning brew. I'll still be doing the agenda when Graham gets back from his island. I was just saying this is an absolutely rubbish leaving present. Some people, when they leave, they get like a gold watch or something. That's usually when you retire, isn't it? But you get something. I got a Mr. Messi mug one time when I left a place, and because I'm quite untidy, you see. But this is a bit crap. Oh, you're leaving, Phil. Well done. Here's your present, Donald Trump presidency, because it's absolutely appalling. Just the consequences now. I'm just going to point out the super chat first of all. Anthony Fisher, £5. Thank you. So thank you all your hard work, Phil. Certainly the Uncle Phil we all need in lives. Oh, thank you very much. But I don't live in Beverly Hills. But what's going to happen if you're reading on social media, right? I mean, there's various ends. You can read things where people are going, right, this is what it's going to do. It's going to do this, and this. We're all buggered. And indeed, they're basing all these things on what Donald Trump has said he would do. They're not just making things up. But I would point out, first of all, some of the things Donald Trump has promised to do is not within his power to do. Now, okay, he's got the Supreme Court on his side. He's going to have the Senate on his side. That might mean there's more things he can do than strictly he has the executive power to do. But we don't know that. Remember, other Republicans still have to pay attention to the next election. Like, remember, Boris Johnson came in and then he was gone because MPs didn't just blindly go ahead with everything he wanted to do because they were worrying about public opinion. So if Donald Trump does some of these things, the public are going to turn on him, and that's going to put pressure on those who support him. So don't assume that just because Donald Trump said he would do a thing that he will. Now, that being said, there are people on the other end of the scale who are going, actually, we could well talk him out of all the serious things. And I'm not sure that's true either. So I think where we're going to have is somewhere in between. But from the UK's point of view, so because there's all sorts of global issues, the UK's point of view, what are the key issues? And I think there are probably four key issues, four key threats from Trump. Or five really. So the first is the climate emergency. I'm probably not going to put that one in because do you know what? Forget it. We're dead. We're all dead. I don't think it's possible to persuade Donald Trump to steer away from his attitudes towards the climate emergency, which is basically he doesn't think there is one. So I think we're not going to be able to get America to carry on as they were under Biden, sort of moving towards net zero. I think then there may be a case of persuading him that some of the industries that Biden has set up are profitable and he shouldn't knock them. But I do not see him trying to curb high carbon industries. So I think we're basically knackered there. The trade war is where we've got a massive problem. Not because Donald Trump has promised to slap tariffs on everyone and he probably means it. I think it's entirely possible that some countries will persuade, and it might even include the UK, could persuade Donald Trump to give them a miss as long as he gets something in return, right? Remember, although Donald Trump is very petulant, very thin-skinned, very narcissistic, what everyone who's had anything to do with him says he's also very transactional. That is why, Kemi Badenoch was trying to, shit stir yesterday. It didn't work. Doesn't work. Pat McFadden's been pointing out today. Yeah, David Lammy and Keir Starmer have both said uncomplimentary things about Donald Trump. So did Boris Johnson. Didn't stop Trump being pally with Johnson. So's his own vice president. So's his own mother, right? So everyone under the sun has said mean things about Donald Trump in the past. And do you know what? Although he is very thin-skinned and he doesn't like it, he doesn't care because everyone says he's transactional. He thinks of himself as this deal maker. And he thinks he doesn't care what you've got to say about him behind his back because he thinks he's going to get a great deal out of you. And as long as that continues, as long as he thinks he's going to get a good deal out of you, he don't care what you said in the past. So the question is, and that'll apply to any country, but that is a problem for European unity, which we need at the moment, because so the UK is going to now try to arrange some special deal whereby Trump, they'll try and persuade him not to trigger the trade war at all, because it's not just about us. If he slaps his massive tariffs on China, that hits us as well. So we will be trying to persuade him not to slap tariffs, trying to persuade him that it'll actually hurt America and hurt him. But if we can't do that, and we might not be able to do that, then we'll at least try and get a concession for ourselves for whatever. But so will other European countries. And this is where we're going to have a problem with EU unity, because there are already countries in the EU that are sort of pro-Putin, pro-Trump anyway. And they're going to try and get themselves a special exemption. So the EU Commission's going to have a problem, I think. I think it's going to have a problem. Unless, of course, again, we can all work together to persuade Trump not to start the trade war at all, which is possible. Again, he's transactional. If you can say, well, look, and again, he's transactional for himself, not even his country. It's not even like we have to do anything good for America. We just have to do something good for him. I don't know, give him a burger or something. Next is Ukraine. Ukraine is a massive problem. Trump's already announced he's going to start peace talks, and he's quite clear about what he's going to do. He's going to say that Ukraine has to surrender territory, a lot of territory, to Russia, blah, blah, blah. It's not allowed to join NATO for 20 years, various things in there. So that is also a massive problem. Now, there's various solutions. I'm just going to come to BUFU Mike there before we move on there. So it says, we need to rejoin the EU pronto for regulation protections or be flooded with subpar products, surely. So here's the problem. You can definitely argue that Trump means that we should, on trade, energy and security grounds, move much closer to the EU, that the urgency for doing so is greater. However, and I keep pointing this out, unfortunately, actual EU experts, EU policy experts are saying, do you know what, it's actually been made harder. So we're not actually, although the urgency to move closer has increased, the likelihood has decreased, which sounds paradoxical. Let me explain. So first of all, from the EU's point of view, they're now really busy. We were not a top priority in the first place. Us joining the single market was never a priority for them because they've got the deal they want anyway. It's a pretty good deal for them. And but they've got all these other problems. They've got China, they've got Russia, they've got the climate emergency, and now they've got Trump. And so the EU have got massive problems. And I've just said the EU is going to be quite disunited in terms of its approach to Trump. So the EU Commission is now got a huge headache. The UK has dropped down in priority. So that's what EU policy experts are saying. They're going to consider the UK already wasn't a top priority and it's now going further down. But from the UK's point of view as well, we're going to try, obviously our government, it's its duty to look after UK interests. And if we were looking at a slower route towards alignment with the EU anyway, in terms of formal deals, and because there's nothing to stop us actually just aligning standards with the EU, we're not going to get a trade deal with the US. Don't waste any time thinking about that. We might talk up the prospect, but we're not going to get a trade deal with the US. It's madness. But we will try and pursue bilateral agreements with Trump. And so that also means we're going to ourselves dial down the priority for the EU, maybe. I mean, we'll have to see what Starmer eventually says, but that's the reality there. In terms of Ukraine, that's quite serious because, like, what do we do Obviously, the first priority has to be to persuade Trump to keep supporting Ukraine. Maybe we even say, oh, yeah, let's absolutely have these talks. Yeah, yeah, peace talks, brilliant, well done. But while they're going on, we have to keep supporting Ukraine. Maybe they can persuade him to do that, and then he won't notice that the peace talks carry on for like another 2 years. Or if he doesn't, if he insists that there's not going to be any more American support, so you've got to come to a deal, does Europe just say, okay, if America, I mean, this is what I would like, but I'm not a military expert. If America doesn't want to take the lead on this, remember, it's America that's been stopping us from just Russia. I mean, Russia isn't a superpower. Let's be clear about this. Russia is not a superpower. It's got a permanent seat on the Security Council, so have we. That's it. But it's got a small economy. Like there are at least 4 countries in Europe that have a larger economy than Russia, right? It's got a small economy. It's got a crap military. Its military is mostly dead. It's had to substitute its military with North Korean troops. So why don't we just go to America? Oh, you don't want to lead on the world stage anymore? No problem. You go back. We'll take care of it, which is what Trump says he wants to do anyway, for Europe to deal with its own problems. Okay. So then we just go, well, we can't afford to just replace those US resources. It's too much money. Imagine every country in Europe suddenly having to double its defense budget. It's not going to happen. And even that, would that be enough? It might be enough. Yes, I think that would be enough. But every country in Europe would have to double its defense budget and give it to Ukraine. So what do we do instead? Do we say, well, let's just get this son of a done quickly then? Because we have budgeted for so much money over the next few years. Why don't we just say, let's get it finished with? Send in the troops. If America doesn't want to lead NATO, send NATO in. Orban might have the odd quibble about that, sod him. Ukraine's invitation, and then just kick Russia out. It's got a crap military. It's really crap. The only thing that anyone fears is a nuclear response. I don't think there's going to be a nuclear response. Send him in, kick him out, then capture North Korean troops, capture the North Korean troops for maximum humiliation, and then once Russia's been expelled from all of Ukraine, secure the border and say, right, should we have talks now? Oh, by the way, these talks are going to mean that Ukraine can join NATO and that you don't get any territory, Mr. Putin. What would you like to talk about? Reparations? But I don't know whether that's realistic. Ivan Ambrose 499, thank you very much. So it says, so to him, floods in Spain mean nothing. Be different if it was his family and friends. My blood pressure's going through the roof. Trump, I mean, the thing is with Trump, it's not just that he's basically evil. I don't use the word evil about a lot of people. He is evil, surely. But also he's just actually incredibly stupid. I mean, it's not even just added on to all of that is the cognitive decline, which is clear in evidence. Donald Trump can't understand anything. He honestly cannot. Don't imagine that Donald Trump is being selfish when he doesn't believe in the climate emergency. I think he just genuinely doesn't understand it and he's incapable of understanding it. He's thick. He's actually thick. Anyway, Shane K. Oh, £40 super chat. Thank you very much. There's Love You, Phil and Graham's. Jamboree US Cohab election coverage of Mason. Hope Kemi fails here and Lib Dems form the opposition. Worried for the future. I am now worried for the future. Because look at the situation. If we do not persuade, like Trump, do you know what? He's going to screw his own country over. And that hurts us as well, because that hurts the global economy. So there's going to be an economic hit from Trump, come what may. We cannot stop Trump doing the most horrendous things to his own country. And that does, it's like they say, America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. But that is largely down to the American people. What, about 15 million people, or was it about 15 million, who voted for Biden in 2020 didn't vote for Harris this time? And I know some of them will have died, right? But then, but nonetheless, millions of people who voted Democrat last time didn't vote at all this time. So that's on them, right? It's on the Democrats as well. There's lots of people to blame. But it is also on those people. So if Trump, screws them over, that is their fault. So I have more sympathy for the rest of the world who didn't even get a vote, right? And what we need to do is to try and prevent this, first of all, creating discord within Europe. Second of all, avoiding a trade war or limiting its damage. And third, making sure that we can still defend Ukraine, because I have my doubts about, for all Keir Starmer saying that we will support Ukraine throughout, um, will we? That's what I would say. Will we? Because what's the plan for doing so, given that Trump doesn't want to? I can understand plan A is to make sure that, as for the Middle East, that's buggered. I can understand that the plan for Ukraine will, first of all, to persuade Trump to keep backing Ukraine. Like at the moment, Biden's trying to rush out the rest of the $6 billion in aid that was promised to Ukraine. But bear in mind, he can't just because it's not money, it's like equipment. So he can only send the equipment that's been manufactured. So this is the problem. Although Biden's now trying to rush out weapons to Ukraine, he's not going to be able to get them all out before Trump's president, because they're being manufactured at a certain rate. We can only send out the one, or he can only send out the ones that are ready to be shipped out. So, the hope has to be to persuade Trump to delay. They basically have to try and get Trump to delay things. Maybe get him to focus on his domestic agenda. Oh, don't you worry about the world, Donald. You come back to it in a couple of years, mate, after which there'll have been midterms and hopefully he'll have less power then. Maybe that's the plan, to sort of persuade Trump that, oh, you've got this huge agenda and make America great there. So you want to focus on your American policies first, don't you, Donald? That's what you want to do. Oh, don't you worry about the rest of the world. We'll look after the rest of the world while you're busy in America. So maybe that'll be it. Alec Barrett, £5 says, Poland's been looking for an excuse to wobble Russia into the Stinky and capture Kunzberg. This gives them this. Well, see, that's the thing, you see. Poland is, of course, worried about what happens if Ukraine is given to Russia. And don't think to yourself, oh, well, it just includes like making Ukraine smaller. No, that's not what's going to happen. What Putin wants is he wants a ceasefire, but without losing face. So he gets to keep land, and then he will not just that. Putin has never honoured a deal in his life. He just wants to reload. He knows his military shit. He wants to rebuild his military and go again. So we must absolutely not agree anything that is anything less than Ukraine's internationally recognised borders being free from Russia. But I worry, because from European point of view, first of all, there are some governments that are pro-Putin, pro-Trump anyway, right? So that's always a problem. But I worry that Europe looks at the situation and goes, if America definitely pulls out and they can't persuade them to do otherwise, they've got a choice. They either replace the funding themselves. I don't think they're going to do that. Because they'll find that in a cost of living, well, it's not always a crisis in all parts of Europe, but it's still, tight budgets everywhere and governments falling like flies. So they can't, I don't think they'll replace the funding. So then they just have to do it quickly. It's like they'd already committed a certain amount of funding over a few years, spend all that money now and just kick them out, send troops in. We've already got the troops. We've already got the forces. Probably, again, I'm not a military expert. I tried to get a military expert to talk to me yesterday. I couldn't get anyone. I'm really crap at getting people. But maybe we could just say, look, Russia's got a shit military, and it's got a shit economy. Just kick them out. Kick them out. Capture as many North Korean troops as possible to humiliate Putin. Get Kim Jong-un looking pissed off. He always looks pissed off, let's be honest. But there we go. It says, neither of the US, to be fair, this is in terms of breaking deals. Plus, didn't they break the Minsk agreement first? America, pretty sure Russia. But Putin personally has never honoured a single deal. Whenever he comes to any sort of peace deal, it's just he just uses it to reload and go again every single time. But I mean, one angry pagans there going about why I talk about the stupidity, ignorance of the average voter. It is real, but you also have to account for it. So you can blame the voters for being stupid, and I do on this occasion. I don't blame, ironically, the voters who voted for Trump, because, you know, it's like, that's actually the Democrats' fault. So you can't, people who turn up and vote, it's quite hard to blame them for doing that. The people I blame are the people who don't vote, because the people who didn't vote, no, like ordinarily, I would say, you know, if the Democrats lose to the Republicans, I'd just say it's the Democrats' fault, right? It's the Democrats' fault. They didn't appeal to enough people. You've got to, you know. But in this particular case, Trump is such an obvious monster. He's such an obvious monster that everyone who stayed at home because of Harris's position or perceived position, because do you know what? I think one big mistake the Democrats made, they didn't really make it clear what their policies were on anything. I'm not clear what their policies were on anything. I just know that they were a hell of a lot better than what Trump was offering. That's it. If I was in America, I would have voted for Harris, but I would have done so as a bloody hell, you know, I don't know what you're going to do, but you're definitely going to be way better than Trump. It would have been as simple as that. I wouldn't really know what I was voting for. I'd just know what I was voting against. But there's lots of people who've stayed at home and they can take ownership of this as well now. So people who may be over the Democrats' Gaza position, and that's, you know, I think that's reasonable, unlike the UK, which basically has no power to do anything more than it is doing. America as a whole did have power, and I don't know exactly how much power Biden really had. But it is fair to say, you know, you failed people in Palestine. But at the same time, if you use that as a reason to not vote at all, then you can own whatever Trump does. Because if you stay at home, my attitude is this, if you stayed at home in America, then whatever Trump does that's bad, that Harris would not have done, is on you, particularly in a swing state. So although the Democrats must take responsibility, and I strongly suspect they're not going to, because they never do, it's like they've never learned lessons. They don't learn lessons. They didn't learn lessons regarding Hillary Clinton. They should never have forced her to be the candidate. They got away with it with Biden. And they haven't gotten away with it this time. And again, partly Biden's fault as well. Biden should have stepped down earlier, I think, as well. You know, but there we go. So Colin's there saying, what about the people who didn't vote for Harris because of Gaza? So I have just explained that. It's like, I mean, you can use your vote however you like, and you can decide not to vote. It's a free country. And hopefully it will remain a free country, because that is now in doubt. But what I say, and I say this of anyone, if you've got a really obvious, I can understand ordinary people thinking there's not much difference between two candidates, right? It's never true, by the way. It's never true. But I can understand how people do that because the media twist things, right? But it was so obvious. This election was so obvious. And Trump is such an obvious monster that absolutely anything that now happened, because people are not happy with the way the US government, which we're talking about mostly the president, has whined at Netanyahu, but not actually forced him to do very much, right? And that's reasonable. That is a reasonable complaint. But Trump is going to egg Netanyahu on now. So, I mean, we've already got, people keep throwing the word genocide around. It's ethnic cleansing. It's now quite clearly ethnic cleansing. Israel are now openly talking about settling Gaza. They're expanding. This is Israel. They're not going after Hamas. I mean, they want to do that as well. Sure, they're not trying to rescue their hostages. No, what they're trying to do is expand Israel, right? And they are murdering people. It's ethnic cleansing, and Trump will back them. And the beauty is Trump, because you know the only silver lining I ever see in things like this is Trump doesn't want to be a war president. He's not a pacifist, but he doesn't want to be seen as a war president. He makes this big thing about there were no wars under me, and it's like, okay, right. And so I don't think he wants to commit American troops anywhere in the world, but he doesn't have to, because Israel will just do it all. They've got a strong enough military to do it. Ivan Ambrose 499 says, when people who voted for him start moaning, it will make for some superheated discussions. Well, yeah, it will, because the people who didn't will say, well, it's not our fault. Harris should have made a better offer. And actually, I'm not going to say they're wrong. The Democrats did not make a good offer. That's the Democrats. I'm not going to pin all the blame on Harris here, by the way. You know, this is the Democrats as an organisation have messed up again, royally. They've screwed their own country again. But at the same time, if you're a voter and you are politically engaged, and anyone who stayed home because of Gaza, I mean, this is a part of the world. Most of the people in America who have a view on it don't even know where it is. You couldn't point it out on a map of the world. So you're talking, and you know, Americans are very famously not really sure about anything to do with world affairs. So if as an American, you have made a conscious decision, and I'm not talking about Palestinian Americans. They will know where Palestine is, of course, and they will know about it. But there's hardly any of them. They did not swing the election at all. But if you are an American who thinks you were supporting the people of Palestine by staying at home, then you've actually just doomed them. Because what is there now to stop Netanyahu? We know what he's like. We know what he's doing. He's already trying to reform his government full of loyalists now. He's getting rid of even some the moderating voices obviously didn't have much impact, but even they're going now. And the whole thing, I now look at it, I've never been more pessimistic about the Middle East. It's a nightmare scenario. It's a nightmare scenario. And anyone who helped, directly or indirectly, Trump into power has to accept that responsibility. And if they don't, I mean, people don't. The Democrats are not accepting responsibility, for example. They're just they're leaning on all sorts of copium. There's things like, it is true, statisticians are pointing out that since 2022, the big post-COVID, post-Ukraine war inflation surge, lots of governments have fallen. So it's easy for the Democrats to say, oh, inflation was the number one problem. The inflation was caused by the war in Ukraine and COVID. So actually, it's not our fault. You can see that emerging from the discussions. And it's like, yeah, that was a massive factor. But that's not to say there was nothing you could do about it. Inflation could have gone up. Why couldn't you have made sure that people's incomes went up higher? Because that's what Labour are doing in this country. They are focusing on income growth. It may or may not work, but that's what they're doing. Keir Starmer said so in PMQs yesterday. You know, in his answer to one of Ed Davies' questions, he said he's prioritising the economy, and he specifically said he's measuring that success in how people feel it in their pockets. So that is Labour showing that they understand that you can't, GDP doesn't matter to people. Inflation, people think it matters, but what they really mean is their personal inflation. And if their incomes go above the level of inflation, then inflation is not a problem for them. But anyway. Angry Pagan, they're saying American liberal politics of holding the status quo and having faith in institutions above all is to blame. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. I think that's a huge part of why Trump came into power in the first place. You know, for all the nonsense Trump goes on about, for all the absolute bollocks he comes out with, Trump is honest as well. There are certain things he said which are absolutely 100% true. He said that in 2015, 2016, that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans were helping ordinary American people. He drained the swamp, he was saying. He says they're all as bad. It's the political elite. They've got their vested interest. They're not interested in ordinary Americans. He was dead right. What he missed out, he just missed out the bit where he would be way worse. But he was right in what he said. You know, populism only flourishes where established politics fails. And where established politics fails, it's because they did not. It's because they try to sort of manage the public. Instead of doing their best for the public, they just say, well, what's the minimum we need to do to keep them happy? And then sometimes what they think is the minimum needed isn't. It's a bit like as a teacher. Sometimes you would get a student and you could tell the work they gave you, it was like what they thought was the bare minimum, so I didn't moan at them. But their estimation of the bare minimum was not necessarily the same as mine. And I think the same thing is the case here. Whereas what government should really do is think, how can we actually do our best for ordinary people? Instead of just saying, what can we do so that they'll be just about happy enough to vote for us? How can we actually do our best for them? But anyway. Here's what it is. I'll just go through the last couple of comments because it's run out of time and I have to get my head shorn at last. I've been waiting weeks. Media allowed Trump to dominate the message, and even when criticising Trump, they were spreading this message. The media is a massive problem in the US. It's a huge problem. It's like the UK media. It lies to people all the time. But again, you have to take that into account. And I'll tell you something else as well. The Democrats should have had an easier time of it because look at the sheer amount of money. Look at the amount of money that went into the American campaign. Like Kamala Harris, when Biden said he was stepping down, Kamala Harris was not even the official candidate, but people thought she would be. She raised more money in a few days for her campaign than all of the political parties in Britain spent during the whole general election. Even given that America has this population 5 times greater, the amount of money is just ridiculous. Do you know how much money the Democrats got? Right? They opened up an office in Florida and people going, oh, are they confident in Florida? Why are they opening up things? And other people just say, no, it's just because they got too much money. They don't know what to do with it. You know, too much, billions. Can you imagine? We could have used that. Why didn't they just, I mean, given that, you actually look at it now and you think, actually, even Biden probably would have done better than this. It's absolutely terrible. Anyway, Ivan Ambrose, very final one, 4.99, slightly off topic. What is your analysis of yesterday's PM Q? Badenoch's first appearance, think she was absolute mess and rightly so. Yes, she's trying to poke at, David Lammy said mean things about my Donald. Is he going to apologise? Things like that. Doesn't work. We know this from the past. Everyone has insulted Donald Trump in the past. Boris Johnson insulted Donald, not unreasonably, by the way, Donald Trump in the past when he was mayor of London and Donald Trump was just a gobshite, right? Boris Johnson did not imagine that he was going to be prime minister at the same time as Trump was going to be president, so he thought it was fine. Did it make a difference? No. You know, David Lammy, when he called Trump all sorts of things, was a backbencher and Trump was coming to the end of his term. David Lammy did not imagine that he was going to be foreign secretary at the same time Donald Trump was going to be president. But again, does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. I have to go and get my hair cut. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. And yes, we'll still be doing the agenda when Graham gets back from his island. But other than that, I shall be trying to spend time on other things. But thanks very much anyway. Have a great rest of day. And until next time, I'll see you later. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button.
Yay! Big round of applause for Phil. Woo!